right, my friends, welcome back. This is going to be part 80 of my presentation on the flood and Noah's Ark. I'm going to try to get through quite a bit of material here, so let's get right into it. We're going to talk about this muck here. It says, these animals perished in rather recent times. Present estimates place their extinction at the end of the Ice Age or in early post-glacial times. And this right here came from Earth in Upheaval by Immanuel Velikovsky, chapter 1, and in the north, in Alaska. And so now, the rest of this paragraph, he says, the soil of Alaska covered their bodies together with those of animals of species still surviving. Under what conditions did this great slaughter take place, in which millions upon millions of animals were torn limb from limb and mingled with uprooted trees? Now, Michael Ord thinks that the millions upon millions is a little bit exaggerated. I don't know. Maybe so, maybe not. But still, it shows a catastrophic nature, where these animals and plants were all jumbled about and buried all at one time. And so, which sounds like the flood. It sounds like the flood. But this first part of it, where it says present estimates place their extinction at the end of the Ice Age or in early post-glacial times. Now, this right here is more of a secular thinking. This came from a secular book. There's no indication that it's talking about the creation timeline. And so they're thinking more of a uniformitarian type of views, though much of what Velikovsky has in his books contradicts uniformitarianism, and that's the reason why a lot of these uniformitarianists could not stand Immanuel Velikovsky, especially Derek Ager. Oh my goodness, boy, did he have some choice words about him. But at any rate, muck is a major geological mystery. It covers 1/7 of the Earth's land surface, all surrounding the Arctic Ocean. Muck occupies treeless, generally flat terrain with no surrounding mountains from which the muck could have eroded. Russian geologists have drilled through 4,000 feet of this muck, 4,000 feet, without hitting solid rock. Where did so much eroded material come from? What eroded it? Oil prospectors drilling through Alaskan muck have brought up an 18-inch long chunk of tree trunk from almost 1,000 feet below the surface. It wasn't petrified. It was just frozen. The nearest forests are hundreds of miles away. William describes similar discoveries in Alaska. And you guys that remember that right below there, you'll see The Energy Non-Crisis, that book. I introduced you to Lindsay Williams during the beginning stages of this presentation. And so, but going on, Lindsay Williams was an ordained Baptist minister for 28 years. At the time the book was written, which was 1980, he volunteered to serve as a chaplain to the pipeliners on the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline, which began the construction phase in 1974. And so this guy walked alongside of the people that worked in the area and discovered the things that you're about to hear about. He said, though the ground is frozen for 1,900 feet down from the surface at Prudhoe Bay, everywhere the oil companies drilled around this area, they discovered an ancient tropical forest. Did you hear me say that? Tropical forest. It was in a frozen state. It is between 1,100 and 1,700 feet down. There are palm trees, pine trees, and tropical foliage in great profusion. In fact, they found them lapped all over each other, just as though they had fallen in that position. And so again, the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished. It perished. The old world has perished. We don't know what the world before the flood looked like. And so, did those trees grow at that latitude up there? Did they? And so, again, guys, we're talking in the Arctic Circle area. Now, He says, what great catastrophe caused this massive upheaval and then led to such dramatic changes in the climate? We stress again that everything is frozen, not petrified, and that the whole area has never thawed since that great catastrophe took place. Now, what's interesting is they also found some same type of things in Antarctica. It is interesting to notice that tropical ferns have also been found at the Antarctic. And the evidence from these two areas, Alaska and Antarctica, considered together, certainly suggest that there has been a dramatic change from a worldwide tropical climate to an Arctic climate within datable times. Datable times. And I would say it would fall along the biblical worldview timeline. Now this is what Michael Ord is saying about the mammoths surviving all the way up until around the end of the Ice Age. It says there is evidence supporting the idea that the woolly mammoths living in northwest Siberia area died after the flood due to the mammoth skeletons on top of glacial tills. On top of glacial tills. If you guys remember me talking about the terminal and the lateral moraines, whenever the glacier starts to move, it pushes up the ground. In some areas, or a lot of areas, it'll scrape away the soil all the way until the bedrock, and so in the granite and scratching it, and so that's what it's talking. You'll see that picture's there. That picture to the left there, showing that. Well, that area that is building up as it's pushing it along, it's building up that ground. And those are called tills, glacial tills, or terminal and lateral moraines. The terminal moraines would be at the front. The lateral moraines would be at the sides. If you look towards the right, you can see that. Just look real closely and you'll see that. That's what he's talking about. They have been found on top of things like that. My only question is what if the glacier pushing along and pushing that ground along is just digging up the bones? It's just digging up the bones, and that's the reason why they're on top of it. That's just my insight into it. Seems to make sense. And so, but at any rate, this is one of the things that Michael Ord is stating to support that the mammoths died towards the end of the Ice Age. He goes on. The woolly mammoths are rarely found in glaciated areas, especially near centers or former ice sheets. When found with glacial deposits, it is practically always at the perimeter of the ice sheets. If the remains are discovered on top of glacial till, mammoths simply migrated into areas former glaciated. If the remains are underneath or within a till, a dead mammoth that formerly lived next to the ice sheet could have been covered by glacial debris during the re-advance or surge of the periphery. And so he's kind of saying what I'm saying, but in the context that if the animals were underneath some of this stuff, it's that as the glacier dug up the ground, it just pushed the ground on top of the already dead mammoth, and that's the reason why you would find these bones underneath. And so I don't know if it's a stretch or not, but that's just what he's saying. Okay, I believe I can still squeeze in some more slides here, so let's see how far we can go. The Edomas or lurs, that second one is pronounced lurs. And so now this is what they are here. Mammoth and other animal remains are often found in these. And so you see that guy there, it's kind of hard to make him out, but go to the bottom of that and you can see him in comparison to this that hill. Of particular interest for paleontologists is the Edoma. Edoma, pronounced Edoma, I guess that's, the Y is silent there, are hills with high proportion of ground ice. They generally stand about 30 to 60 feet high, but sometimes up to 200 feet high. In Alaska, the material is called muck. It's called muck. And we just talked about some of this muck at the beginning of this. This is actually Lurch layer, a Lurch layer, as a rule containing the largest amount of remains of late Pleistocene Ice Age animals. The Lurch is wind-blown silt mixed with a little clay and fine sand. And this is some of the stuff that they had found. If you remember that horse, that baby horse, they found some of this inside of its trachea and the bronchial areas. It was inside of its passageways, and so showing that it was alive when it happened. It is known that the hills were formed under cold, windy conditions, since they are composed of a powdery, homogeneous, same kind as what that means, soil, honeycombed with thick veins of ice. Sometimes the ice, which several Russian geologists have concluded was formed simultaneously with the soil, accounts for 90% of the Edomas volume. Some Edomas contain many broken trees in the wildest disorder. The natives call them wood hills, and the buried trees they call what, guys? Noah's wood. Why in the world would they call it Noah's wood? Isn't that interesting? That the people around the area, the natives, call it Noah's wood? You guys wait until we get into the flood legends. It's going to blow your mind what's around this world on what other people say. There is more about the Bible than you could ever imagine, and how people have knowledge of it that you wouldn't think. But at any rate, this is a picture of that. Now, going on, these are dust storms. The Dust Bowl era in the Midwest United States in the 1930s. These things were amazing. Now, the reasons for dry, windy dust storms at the end of the Ice Age would be colder winters, colder ocean, more sea ice, drier atmosphere, and stronger north-south temperature difference. And what Michael is saying is that's how some of these mammoths were buried. If you got number one there, the wind-blown silt begins, and then it shows the stages of how it would happen. And the mammoth would kind of hunker down, and before you know it, it covers the mammoth in a standing position. And all that pressure of everything would break the front legs would break, like the Berezovka mammoth. We talked about that, how its leg was shattered in a dozen pieces. Now the front leg breaks, and then it suffocates. It can't breathe. Now the permafrost begins, and then you see over the time, the permafrost faults would shift. It would shift, which would break the pelvis, and the ribs would break. And so it would cause that animal more damage to it, though it was already dead. And so now, if you'll see this, all the red dots are mammoths. All the yellow ones are rhinoceroses. And I've got an arrow pointed to one area, a cemetery in a Edoma of at least 156 mammoths, hair and flesh remains. A cemetery of at least 156 mammoths with hair, going by hair and flesh remains. And so that's just right there in number 48. And this was 1693 to 1988 reports. And so mammoths are often found in the Edomas. And so now, looking at the end the end Ice Age mass extinctions, possibly by dust storms. And this again is from Michael Ord. He says 100 species of large animals were made extinct in North America, and then 75% in Europe and Asia, and 90% in Australia, due to, he said, possibly by dust storms. And so again, that's one of the other theories that is thrown out. And so they believe that the mammoths were buried by these huge dust storms. And so We'll stop right there. When we come back, what's next? What's next? We are going to look at Wrangel Island. Wrangel Island, and some of the wild things about that. And guys, we're got a couple more videos to go, but we're coming to the end of the mammoths. Not the end of the ice age, just the end of the mammoths. And so there's still a few more left with the ice age, but we're coming close. We're coming close to even finishing the ice age. And so, but at any rate, guys, I'll let you chew on this. And so, just another interesting things that has been talked about with the mammoths and what they've been found in and some of the areas and stuff like that. And so, but you guys take care. I love you. Hope the Lord bless you real good. Bye.